All right, everybody, welcome. We are live from Video Cafe in Linwood Bridge. Today, yes, we have our South African issue load shedding that has caused us to move our usual location from Karoo Cafe to Video Cafe. But nonetheless, here we are. We are here today to talk to Layla, which joins us from the Middle East, where she was involved with cross-cultural ministry. And she's going to share today her experience with us. And thank you for being here, Layla.
Thank you very much.
Just to introduce myself, I'm Van Adrea. We've got Wessel here on the Merwe. And today we're going to ask her a few questions. And let's hear what she has to say. So Layla, tell us, how did you become a Christian?
Well, I grew up in a Christian family, of which most of my ancestors were all in ministry somehow. And so to me, I had a childhood conversion. It was nothing huge. It was basically like a natural progression. And So, and I also do prefer to call myself a Jesus follower, because that puts it a bit more in perspective. Because often, you know, the word, especially when you go into cross-cultural ministry, the name Christian can be very much misused or misinterpreted.
Yes. And how did you discover your calling specifically to the Middle East?
Well, that actually happened very shortly after I came to faith. I was also a teenager, and I was about 12 or 13 years old, and the Lord just basically used the Gulf War to put Arabs on my heart. The whole of the Arab
Gulf War, that's the Desert Storm War.
Yes, this was between Iraq and Kuwait. Basically, America jumping in there, yeah. So
Okay.
this was kind of at the end of the Iran-Iraq war. So specifically in the Arab Gulf. This was 1990 to 92 roundabout.
And that's when you felt the yearning for the people.
Yeah, he just put that on my heart. And, you know, it's amazing how you can love a people group without knowing them. So it was
Interesting.
amazing. Yeah.
But yeah, and the next question though is interesting, because you're a single foreign woman in a foreign country, especially the Middle East. What was it like being
in which sense? Well, firstly, your wings are clipped. It depends on where you are. You know, the Middle East is a very, very big place, and it's not just, you know, oftentimes I think, especially here in South Africa, if you think of the Middle East, you think of one country or two countries, but it's actually quite a big place, and each area has their own dynamic. So yes, as a single female in the Arab world as such, it's very much frowned upon. Firstly, because
it's very
culturally it's very frowned upon. Yeah. Yes. So basically, because most Arab cultures are very patriarchal, and a woman isn't allowed. She doesn't have a voice. Her brother or her father or her husband speaks for her, or even her cousin.
Yes.
You know. So being a single woman has its challenges in that sense. You know, simply culturally, for them to accept you as being a single woman living alone, it's quite shameful actually. And because usually a single woman would live with her family. So yes, otherwise also depending, as I say, on where exactly you are, there are more dangers in certain areas of being kidnapped and this kind of thing. But otherwise, it's mostly a cultural taboo.
Yes.
It's a cultural taboo in a big way. So yes, it's challenging, and your wings can be very clipped.
Challenging.
But it's also an adventure.
Yeah, I think so too. I like the adventure part, the excitement. There's a new culture to experience.
It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to back the question, aren't you afraid for your life?
On what ground?
Well, I mean, aren't you afraid for your life because of your faith?
Okay, that's a good question. Well, firstly, I know, coming from South Africa, again, our misconception of the Middle East, we just think war, because this is the only media we get. The only news we get from that side is all negative, and they're all terrorists, and they're all bad, and it's violence, right? But this is all we get on this side. But that's not the truth.
So we get the wrong message.
Absolutely, because it's not the truth. There's a lot happening, but the basis of it. You know, unfortunately, I'm personally very much against generalizing, but it is human to generalize, right? So people would say, first thing they would ask me when they hear where I'm serving, they was like, aren't you afraid they're going to kill you? It's like, well, no. Firstly,
It's human. They're human. It's life.
no, but let me see what you're
Do
asking.
you feel that threat while you were living there?
I was under actual threat the last few years, but I knew how to handle it. You know, it's also the way you live there. You know, I mean, if you live in a foreign country, you respect your host country and your host culture.
Yes.
That doesn't mean conform in the sense of religion or something, but you respect your host culture.
And you don't overstep your bounds.
Exactly. You know,
Okay.
you need to understand the culture and respect it, because otherwise you're going to look for trouble.
It's like we say, you become streetwise.
Yeah, but yeah, that's the thing. And also, otherwise, you're going to look for trouble. It depends on where you live. If you live in a place like I was the last while, we'll get to that a little bit later. It is actually dangerous to be a foreigner there. Thankfully, I look like the locals and I speak the local language. This helps a lot. This helps a lot.
Which makes you blend in a bit better.
So, so you asked about being afraid of my life, but because of my faith. So, firstly, this is also a misconception that people have.
I would think it's taboo.
No, exactly, because this is the idea we have on this side. No, because, put it this way, if you look at the last, between 2014 especially and 2017, when ISIS ran rampant in Iraq and Syria,
Yeah.
they were killing Christians from top to bottom. The reason for this, because remember, they are an extremist insurgent group. They are like the far right, if you can say that, of their religion.
Okay.
And basically the reason why the Christians were killed is if they do not, whether they're Christians or from the other sect, which we'll get to in a bit. No matter who you are, if you don't conform to what they believe, whether you're a Christian or a Yazidi or a Sabian, whatever, or a Kurd, if you don't conform to their religious norms and their rules, you've got three choices.
Okay.
Then you're an enemy of God in their mind. You've got three choices. Either leave, flee, or we kill you, or conform. It's one of those three things. So that is why Christians were so persecuted there. So firstly, this is very much, it's not the norm. Again, it's an extremist group. Now remember, in any religious group or any people group, you have the bad apples, if you want to put it that way. And they're a small number. They're not the majority. And this is what these guys are, of course. But the media serves them because they have a what's the right word now? They want to have a campaign of fear.
Okay.
This is what they want. So the media serves them well. So just getting back to being in the Middle East as a Christian, first of all, certain countries have traditional Christians that have been there since 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? First of all. Secondly, in that part of the world, as a Western foreigner, they assume I am a Christian.
Automatically.
They assume you're a Christian.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. But then leading to the next question I have is, so who did you serve under? Did you serve in a specific people's group?
yes, I did. I served in two different countries.
Yeah.
The first one I was about two and a half years. And so there I was specifically involved with the development project under the Bedouin. And so the Bedouin are basically Arab people. They're an Arab people group, but they're still living as nomads. They travel seasonally with their camels and their goats and whatever.
Okay.
So yeah, they live out in the desert.
And how long were you there? 2.5 years.
2 years, around about.
2 years. Well, it was leading actually to
Where I was lost, yeah.
where you were lost.
Yeah,
now.
so my first country where I served, I'm not going to mention the country's name,
Okay.
either country, just for security's sake.
Yes, no, of course.
Anyway, so as I said, I served under the Bedouin in the desert. So they basically religiously, just for getting back to what you asked about being a Christian and being afraid for my life, okay? And I mentioned ISIS, which is
Yeah.
a Sunni insurgent group, okay? So the Bedouin are also Sunni Muslims, but that doesn't mean they're bad, that they are insurgents. That doesn't mean they're violent. They just want to live a normal life and have the best for their children. They're normal people like you
Just
and me.
live life, raise their kids.
This is it.
a
They're not the
peaceful
bad.
life.
We have a tendency to think, but they're all bad guys. and they're all terrorists, but it's not the truth. Exactly. They're the minority. They are the minority. So yeah, I first served under the Bedouin.
So they're not radical.
No, but the word radical, again, is the wrong word, but it's a good question. If you're talking about the insurgent groups, these guys believe in the jihad, which is actually one of the pillars of Islam,
Yes.
newly, but that's basically the holy war that they believe they need to wage against all God's enemies. So for the Sunni Muslims, that is anyone that's not a Sunni Muslim. For the Shia Muslims, it's anyone that's not a Shia Muslim.
Okay.
So anyway,
They're a bit contrast, so they can fight one another.
but this is what most of the fighting in the Middle East is about, is them fighting against each other, and everyone else gets in the way.
I'm glad you explained that, because I think that's the picture we don't really get to see.
They're not,
Yeah.
it's not the Christians that are the enemy. They're in the middle. They get caught in the middle.
Yeah. But they're actually fighting each other.
Exactly. They're fighting each other, yeah.
Interesting.
So these are the two main sects. Anyway, so yes, and then also in my first country, when our project finished under the Bedouin, I moved to the city where I served under the Syrian and Iraqi refugees, especially. So there are people from other areas, but especially those two, with the Syrian war that's been waging now since 2011, so there are lots of refugees all over the Middle East. So that was in the 2 years that I was in my first.
Is that like squatter camps almost?
No, well, you would call it that, but actually I wouldn't say squatter camps, we call them camps. They're refugee camps. They basically, because the UNHCR and those guys really do get involved in providing tents and such. It's quite a mess, yeah.
So, do you find it difficult to raise financial support, especially under the Muslim banner?
Honestly, yes. My first country wasn't that hard. It was hard enough, but it wasn't that hard. But especially my second country, where I served the last 4 years, I served there under Shia Muslims especially.
Yeah.
There I was also involved with development projects and one relief project. Yes, unfortunately I do. So it took me longer to find financial partners to go to my second country. I'm just going to call it Desert City.
Yeah.
So that's my city where I've served the last 4.5 years. I have found it more difficult to raise funds when people know I'm going to serve under Muslims, and especially in that country.
Interesting.
And,
So the attitude, why should I care for a Muslim?
Exactly. And people would go so far as to say, well, if you told me you were going to serve under the Jews, I'll support you, but not the Muslims. So, and what's heartbreaking about this is scripturally, the Lord does not identify certain people he wants saved.
Yes. He wants to save all.
He wants to save everybody. As the Apostle Peter wrote that the Lord is not slow as we understand slowness, but he is patient indeed, because he wants all people to be saved. There's no asterisk with that says except Muslims or except Arabs.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yes, it's not the easiest people group to find financial
Well,
support.
look, I must commend you, because there's few people that have a heart for Muslims and to do what you do, single woman in a foreign country in difficult situations, and you find it difficult to find support.
I will say this, that
Wow.
remember, it's not, at the end of the day, the Lord comes through with the provision.
Yes, he does.
But apart from that, it's not so much, how can I put this? It's the Lord that puts it on someone's heart to support you. And it's up to them to obey or not. Right. So at the end of the day, as I say, he provides, but yes, it's much more difficult to find people to support you for that part of the world.
So if people are interested in supporting you, how would you, in which way and how and where and how much can they support you with?
Okay, so there are different aspects. I basically have, can we say in Afrikaans, we call it the tuisspan. I have a home team
A taste span.
a taste span. Yeah, I have a home team basically that consists of a home base. Yeah, that basically, and remember, it's not my ministry; it's the Lord's ministry, and we are all a team. I cannot do it without these guys, my intercessors. I have guys that help me with logistics when I'm on furlough, this kind of thing. I have guys that help me with accountability. I have accountability partners. And then also, yes, as I say, financial partners and prayer partners. Those two are the biggest ones.
Okay.
Because,
Just explain quickly accountability partners. What does that mean?
Just because one is obedient to go where the Lord sends you, you must still be held accountable. And I think that is also a part of personal growth and your journey, So that's just someone that, you've got your goals in certain areas, whether it's in ministry or even personal development. Then you have that person you can trust. It's good to find someone, whether it's a family member.
Is there a tool that you use, a newsletter or a broadcast? Yes. What do you use to give accountability with?
I have a newsletter. Though because of the nature of the area that I've served, I can't have like an open broadcast because it's security. It's very dangerous. Anyway, so yes, I have a newsletter that I send out. At this point, it's only about 2 or 3 times a year. In the beginning, it was four times a year, but when you get busy, it gets hard. So yes, I do have a newsletter.
I think maybe just expand on the fact that, we, from previous discussions and before we had this podcast, was people have the idea that support needs to come in big ways, not in small ways. Can you explain what does matter to you when it comes to that kind of support?
I'm glad you asked that question because it's also, again, misconception,
Yeah.
So, as I said earlier, remember it's the Lord that raises up the funds and how he does it is his way. And people tend to think, as you mentioned, that it needs to be big amounts and that kind of thing. So, honestly, for me personally, it does help to have people that commit, that say, I'm going to support you this much monthly. Because then you've got that coming in. Sometimes you have people that give one donation, whether it's big or small. But I want our listeners to understand that it doesn't matter how much it is. If that is all you have, and if you only have 50 rand, for example, once off, or to commit with, but the Lord is laying it on your heart to sponsor that, to give that money towards ministry. Be obedient. Don't think that what
can 50 rand do?
Remember the parable of the widow with her coin? That was her whole savings, but she gave it to the Lord. So at the end of the day, don't feel that what you feel the Lord is placing on your heart, but this is all you can afford, that is not good enough.
Okay.
Was that coin not good enough for the Lord of the widows?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So the point is that the Lord will bless you and he will multiply it to you. So if you feel that the Lord is nudging you to do that, take that step of obedience and see how the Lord provides for you. But don't stay away from it or don't refrain from it because you think it's not going to mean anything, because every little bit helps.
Thank you for that, because that breaks a certain paradigm in my viewpoint, where I thought, 50 rand, 10 rand, whatever you could, if it's in small amounts, it doesn't really make a difference. But you give me the consensus that it actually really does. Yeah.
Again, if you look at a full bucket, one extra drop is going to make it overflow. Just one drop. So yes, if you feel that the Lord, you feel the Lord is laying it on your heart, and you want to be faithful and obedient with that, don't let it stop you when you think it's maybe too little. And I also want to maybe just mention something else I forgot to add earlier. When I felt the Lord calling me to ministry, I immediately thought that I wasn't good enough.
Automatically.
Yes, because the enemy told me this. I believed his lie. Because I grew up, as I mentioned, in a Christian family, but also with all my ancestors being in ministry somehow. So I grew up putting them on a pedestal. It's like, I'm not special enough to do that kind of work, right? And I believed the devil when he told me you're not special enough. And don't believe that. Don't believe that anyone can do this kind of work. No, but the point is, I want everyone out there to listen to this. If you feel the Lord is calling you into full-time or short-term ministry, However, then follow up on that.
Okay.
Don't listen to the enemy's lie that says you're not special enough or you're not good enough.
So just to wrap up the last maybe question or two, so what are you trusting the Lord for in the near future, for your future?
Well, yes, that's a big question. So I am back now for the long term due to certain issues not in my control. I had to leave the field, so I just came back now about a month ago. And so I'm trusting the Lord really to guide me in what's next. I do want to remain in ministry here in South Africa.
Okay.
I will be remaining with my organization that I have been serving with. And I am taking a bit of a sabbatical, but I'm trusting the Lord to, well, of course, provision and just
And
to show
maybe
me.
just a way forward.
Yeah, a way forward. Just
Where's
to
your
see-
next
Yeah,
season?
I'm not sure. I believe it will be in South Africa, but I'm not sure where he wants me to be involved. I have many ideas, but I want to put it at his feet and say, Dad, where do you want me and what do you want me to do?
So we've got a listener base which we send this recording to, and we just want to obviously create the platform for any prayer requests. You know, is there any prayer requests that the listeners can actually hold in their hearts for you? What would that request be?
Yes, please. Well, so first of all, as I say, I'm in a transitional period now, which is not easy. Honestly, my body is here, but my mind and my heart is still back in the Middle East with my people there. So just for this transition, it's really not an easy place to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing. Just for
You've been there 8 years.
8 years altogether.
It's
yeah.
a lifetime, eh?
Yeah. I need to kind of relearn how to live in my own culture. So it's a weird place to be. It's a weird place to be, yeah.
It's a weird place to be.
Yeah, so I think just for that part, just that the Lord will guide me in that. And also, the way forward. As I say, I'm not sure. I have many ideas, but I don't know what the Lord wants. Yeah. But so just the Lord has already provided me with housing. So that's a big price point. It's short term, but it's
Something.
there.
It's something, yeah. Thanks, Layla. No, really, we appreciate you coming onto the show and explaining or sharing what an interesting 8 years you've lived. That's quite interesting. So, Vessel, did you have any other questions? Or do you want to just close in prayer? Or?
Yeah, I would have just liked to have seen you dressed up like a desert.
I can show you
or
pictures.
something,
I can show you
and see how you eat that that pancake bread and roti like roti and
Shrag.
yeah, that stuff and some meat and the way
I'll
you
invite you.
prepare.
I'll invite you guys to a special meal. I'll make you some.
I would
little-
love that because the cultural part is the adventure part.
Can you say something to the listener in Arabic
Yeah.
and then translate it into English, just as a finish off? Anything you want to tell?
Why do you guys always do that?
No, but because when you spoke Arabic the other day, I was like, what are you saying?
Oh yeah, you heard when I
Yes,
was on the phone.
Afrikaans, Macy speaking Arabic. So
I can do that. Just give me a moment. I just need to put my different hats on. يا جميع رب يبارككم ويحفظكم ويخلي وجهه يلمع عليكم باسم يسوع المسيح.
okay, what did
So
you say?
basically, I just said the Lord bless you and keep you and make His
okay.
face shine upon you in Jesus' name.
Yes, it's very much like close to Hebrew.
There's actually
Yes.
there's a lot that's very similar
Baruch.
because they're brothers. The two
Yes.
languages, yeah.
Baruch Alachin. Barak.
Ali
Ali-
Barakum.
Ali
Either
Okay.
if it's a group of people.
I know Hebrew, but I don't
We have 10 different verbal conjugations. In English, we basically have 2, except with the be verb, where we have an am as well. So now Arabic has
So just quickly for me, how do I say hello in Arabic?
what time of the day?
Morning.
Morning. Okay, so to a stranger or a friend or a colleague, someone close or a colleague.
Stranger.
Salam alaikum. Salam alaikum, and then you can. Then I would answer back wa alaikum salam, and then you could say, for example, rahmat barakat Allah. So
What?
the Lord's mercy and blessing be upon you.
But you say it so quickly. You speak it so fast. Interesting. Well, guys, thanks. That's a wrap. Thank you, listeners. We hope to be back in our usual spot at Career Cafe, Linwood Road, the Volgers. And see you next week. Usual time, 10 o'clock. Thank you so much for listening. Cheers.